All right, Mr. Chairman, you should be ready to go.
All right. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is for Town of Newington Conservation Commission, June 17th, 2025. Will the recording secretary please take the roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Anderson,
Here.
Commissioner Bashand,
Here.
Commissioner Ellis,
Here.
Commissioner Morris,
Here.
Commissioner Ostrowski,
Here.
Commissioner Peskowicz,
Here.
Commissioner Wimett, Commissioner Conway, Commissioner Sadil, Chairman Zellick.
Here. All right. For the absent Commissioner Conway, I'm going to seat Commissioner Ostrowski. And for the absent seat of Commissioner Sadel, I'm going to seat Commissioner Ellis. So we should have a quorum this evening. Before we go on to acceptance of minutes, I'm going to ask the commission to modify the agenda under new business. The applications are listed in the order in which they were received. However, we have two from the town, which I suspect will go on a little bit longer than the other two from the public. The two from the public are for minor additions. And I would like to have those moved to the top of the agenda under new business so that we can get the public out of here before we go into the town business. So what I would like to do is take item C and move that to item A. Take item D and move that to be item B. Take item A, move that to be item C, and take item B to be item D. Is the commission going to get a consensus? Are you in agreement?
Fine with me.
Very good. Can I get a motion then from one of the commissioners to
Make a motion to modify the agenda as outlined.
second, please?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Ellis. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any objections? Anyone abstain? All right, that motion passes unanimously. We'll now go on to acceptance of minutes, approval of minutes from April 15th, 2025. Commissioners have any modifications, corrections to the minutes that they would like to make?
None here.
Okay, seeing none from any of the commissioners, motion to accept the minutes.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Have a second, please?
Second.
Second from
Second.
Commissioner Ellis. All in favor? Say
Aye.
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 Any abstentions? Anyone opposed? Seeing none, acceptance of the minutes passes unanimously. Moving on to the next item is public hearings. We have none. Next item is public participation on non-agenda items. If there's any member of the public wishing to speak on anything that is not on our agenda this evening, I'd like to ask them to come forward at this time. Seeing none in the room, anyone online?
There is one member online on Zoom, but there is no hands raised.
Okay, very good. We'll move on then to new business. So again, we have modified the agenda. So the first one is application IW-25-7 to enlarge a basement and first floor into the backyard at 4 Gilbert Road within the upland review area in an R12 zone. The applicant contact owner, Margaret Kelly Kilpatrick. If the applicant is present, would they please come forward to the table? And for the commission, Chris and I spoke about this in his office earlier this month. This seems to be a fairly minor addition. However, it is in the upland review area near Mill Brook. We had a similar application on Wells Drive North with a residence and a small addition abutting Mill Brook. So the option is here. We can turn this over to our agent and let them handle this as an agent approval rather than prolonging this and having it go through full commission. But what I would like to do is have the applicant give us a quick presentation and then let the commission decide if we can turn this over as agent approval. Okay, with that said, if you go ahead and let us know what your plan is,
Okay,
if you could just
my
state
name
your
is
name.
Margaret Kilpatrick.
Thank you.
I live at 4 Gilbert Road in Newington. We wish to add a 10 by 14 addition to our home, and this will enlarge our spare bedroom and add a bathroom. Purpose is to make a room for my 89-year-old mom. We currently have only one bathroom, which poses a problem for her. And we would like to move her in as soon as we can.
If we have the plan on page 1, we gave you a package.
Yes. On page 2, you'll see the space needed for the 10 by 14 concrete slab, which will be a frost foundation. And any excavated material from that will be removed from the property. On page 3, you can see a footprint of the space, and the dotted line that you see there would put a silt fence there to capture any wandering debris during excavation and construction. Items 1 and 2, as it says, represent our camper and our wood pile, so they'll be removed during construction, and that whole area is all paved driveway. That whole big square back there and up the side of the house to the road is all paved driveway. And only the 10 by 14 area needed for the foundation will be, dug up and removed. The rest of the driveway will remain intact. Page 4 is just to give you a visual that our property, which is number 4 on there, does have a gradual downhill to Millbrook. And we believe that is roughly like a 12 to 14 foot drop from the floor of our basement down to the bank of the brook. And page 5 allows you to see the current space as it is today. The room on the lower picture, the room protruding from on the right side, that comes out 16 feet. And the addition that we wish to put on will come out 10 feet. So it's not, it's just to give you an idea of how far that would be coming out. You can see that it's all a driveway there and a grass hill down to the back. On the left-hand side of that top picture, that is a rock wall behind those stacks of wood. That's rock wall there with, our grassy backyard space to the left that you can't see. And beyond that does go downhill, and that's like a rock hill to meet, goes downhill and meets the wooded area, which is all covered in Baltic ivy. I think that's all I had to say. If there's any questions, I don't know if I've answered all the questions you might have.
I do have one question. Page 3, the aerial photograph. It looks like there's currently a vegetative buffer between your dwelling and the brook. Is that vegetative buffer going to remain undisturbed?
Correct. Yeah. The only thing is the area where we're that will need to be dug out, cleaned out for the 10 by 14 foundation off the back of the house there. It's that little white lines with the streaks across them, stripes across it. That's that number 3 is a shed, and all that wooded areas, that's not going to be touched.
All right. My other question I'm going to direct to Chris regarding controls for sediment. Everything is up to standard. So you like to see it?
Relatively minor E&S controls on a project like this, but yes, their contract will be required to adhere to those.
Okay.
So basically either a silt fence or you see what they call wattles or coil logs, what we posted on the downhill side of the property.
Yeah. Oh, well,
Did you cover that?
yeah,
in
where
your-
that dotted line, so that's on that page, on page 3,
Yeah.
this white line with the black dots, that would be all silt fence, like along that side. There's a actual fence there. It's hard to tell in the picture, but that whole back driveway, we'd put silt fence around the whole driveway space,
Okay.
into the
You do have
grass
the
that's
option.
around it.
You don't
And we
have,
talked to Ron about that already,
Okay.
our builder.
so silt fence, coil log, or hay bales are all acceptable.
Oh, okay.
Management practices, but we have to have at least one of them.
At least one of them.
Yes.
Absolutely.
At some point, myself or staff will stop by and see how you're doing.
Okay.
Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Bertrand?
Just some observations or a question for Chris. I mean, the addition's not going to be any further into the upland review area than the previous. I'm assuming that was an addition on the back of the house.
That addition, yes, that was the
That's on
previous owner.
Piers.
That was a previous owner. That's on Piers.
Yeah, and when was that built?
I don't
if
know
you know.
because, no,
The only reason when I look at the aerial photo, it doesn't match the look on the aerial photo. I mean, on page 4, but it's not a big deal. Your addition, what my point was, is that your new addition is not going to extend any further into the upland review area than what's already there, so.
It's paved area now.
right, it's,
already.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm saying it's not going to extend further than that,
No.
the existing addition.
Right.
no, it won't.
I see little impact.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Any other comments from commissioners? Anybody online? Commissioners have their hands up?
No commissioners have their hands up online.
Okay, with all of that said, then I'd like to entertain a motion to have this application go to agent approval. Commissioner Bouchon, I know you've read the last two motions. For this application, inland wetland 25-7. There's a motion here, a draft motion to authorize the agent. Did you read that?
Yeah, 25/7.
Yes. The motion to authorize the agent to administratively approve the application.
Okay. I make a motion to authorize the agent to administratively approve the application and move to authorize the agent to approve administratively.
Okay, can I get a second? A second. Second from Commissioner Ellis. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion for administrative approval passes unanimously. You can work with Chris going forward. No need to come back to the commission.
Have a good evening.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Appreciate your time.
Okay, moving on then, we're going to go to application IW 25-8. This is to install a second elevator on the southwest corner of the building at 1 John H. Stewart Drive in the public land zone. There will be a 0.02 acres of disturbance within the upland review area. Applicant BSC Group Incorporated, contact Frank Vasca, owner Hartford Hospital, care of Hartford Health Care Corp. The applicant is present with a step forward. I believe we have someone substituting for Frank Vasca. If you could just state your name for the record and your address, and then give us your presentation. And again, for the commission, this is it appears to be a minor modification, and I'd like you to consider this one for agent approval as well.
Am I allowed to present?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
If you just state your name and address for the record.
If you have a presentation, we can promote.
Oh, you should be able to, you should be able to share. So just give a share a try and there you go. And I'll allow.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry. Good evening, all. Thank you so much for having us here. My name is Erika Nunez, and I am a licensee engineer in training with BSA Group, located in Glastonbury, Connecticut. And we are here to present this elevator addition project at the Jefferson House, owned by Hartford Healthcare, and a project led by Amendaima Architects. We are here to respectfully request an approval under Section 7 of the Newington Inland Wetland and Water Course Regulations for the installation of a new elevator shaft located at the southwest corner of Jefferson House. And this is a picture of the existing condition of the proposed elevator location. Just as a background, this is Jefferson House campus located at 1 John H. Stewart Drive, close to Newington Dog Park, Northwood Height Apartments, and it is close also to a wetland down this area. This little yellow rectangle, it's our elevator addition location. And you may or may not know, but Jefferson House, it's a long-term care and rehabilitation services for senior facility that has served Hartford area community over 120 years, and all this time they have served senior community with only one existing elevator location. This is the reason that we are presenting this elevator addition to serve to the patrons facility in, well, for enhance the experience of the senior community, but also to provide security in the case that this existing elevator fails, and security since this new elevator addition will be a bigger elevator that will provide, they will be able to provide larger supplies to the second floor, and they will also be able to feed a stretcher in the case of an emergency.
Can you show us exactly on the map? If you go back where it is?
Yes,
It's the lower left corner?
this, could you see my red point in here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, this is the location.
See the little yellow rectangle?
Yes,
I don't see it on this plan. Is it on this plan or?
Probably not. I did that one.
but I could show you more about like this specific slide. It's with the information from the Town of Newington Map Express property information viewer with all the deep map layers that can, well, let us know with certainty where it's located in this area. This is the elevator location that happens to be in the upland review area, the 100-feet buffer area. We can also see it in the survey existing condition where our elevator location, it's between the 100-feet buffer area. Here you can, well, we can see it better. This is the 100-feet area buffer, and this is the limit of the wetland itself, delineated by the survey team.
Where's the elevator?
In here,
Right there. Okay.
in here. This is the limit of the wetland itself, and as you see in here, this is the 100-feet buffer area.
So most of the building or that corner of the building is already in the upland review area.
Exactly. And these projects, it's around 1,000 square feet, what it's the 0.02 acres shown in here. So this slide allows us to state that we are not altering any wetlands, we are not altering any water courses or any resource area associated in our project location. We can also go with the details for the site preparation and demolition plan that we are proposing. It's important to mention that the entire area will be surrounded by perimeter erosion control in accordance with the 2024 guidelines for soil erosion and sediment control. There are the typical erosion and sediment control as an inlet protection that are gonna be installed and will remain through all the construction. In these existing manholes, this is the way that they look in the real life. And we are also delimiting the construction itself. It will be in this area. And we are proposing a straw water perimeter control instead of silt fencing to have a low impact or disturbance in this area. As you may or may not know, for installing the silt fencing, you have to disturb more soil involved in this area. And since this is a very small addition to this existing building, we want to provide this ENS control without disturbing that much this area.
And
We
what
are-
is the alternative?
This is straw wattles.
Straw?
Straw.
Oh, wattle, yeah, okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
This is how they look in the real.
Mhm.
And yes, all drainage shall be directed away from the wetlands. For the site plan, here we can see how the site plan for the civil design perspective, it's intended. This hatch area, it's the elevator addition, and we can see it from the architectural design plan, what will be added. This will be the elevator itself with a corridor. This hatched area at the right, it's the existing building itself, and this is our around approximately 1,000 square feet of addition. This is very minimal. It's less than 1% of the entire building layout. And in general, this will be our area of work. I could even just try it in here. This will be the area that we will be working on. We will remove and replace this bituminous concrete sidewalk. We are not touching the existing stairwell. We are providing and slightly grading around the surrounded elevator addition. But we are essentially keeping all the drainage flows, all the existing drainage flows and patterns. It's important to mention that all runoff from the building, it's clean and should be dissipated by an outlet protection plunge pole. That is the thing that we can see in here, and it's enlarged in this area. And it's also important to mention that this was coordinated, the selection of this was coordinated with the town engineer, and it's in accordance of all Connecticut drainage manual. And this is the extent of this presentation. Again, we are respectfully requesting an approval from this Conservation Commission, and thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
So if I could ask just real quick, similar question. I see from the aerials, there's a vegetative buffer between the building and the wetlands delineation. Is that vegetative buffer being disturbed in any way?
No, actually, in this picture, this last picture that you can see in here was taken last week, and the tree line that we could appreciate in the in all the plan, it's this area in here. And in this area, it's where we are proposing to have wattles, the straw wattles, the erosion and sediment control itself, but the extent of the project itself will be in this area. Of course, we will have to slightly regrade this area to smooth the area with this addition, but essentially it will just, all the construction will be kept in this upper area. We are not working close to the wetland delineated itself, no, after these tree lines.
Okay. And looking at the plan, I'm not seeing any dimension given. What's the diameter of the straw wattle? I'm just curious how large that is.
That's a great question. I do not manage that information, but this is just a typical erosion and sediment control installation.
So the photograph.
Yes,
showing it.
they,
You can get them in 6, 8, and 12-inch diameters.
We don't know which one we're using here.
A 6 would work. I mean, this is such a small area disturbance.
Okay.
So the smallest that's available would do the trick. Their drain pipe for the additional roof runoff is only a 4-inch diameter pipe. So then there's a very little additional runoff. Well, it's not even additional. It's just changing where the runoff comes from, roof versus ground. So.
Okay, those are my questions. Any questions?
I
from
just
the
had
commission?
one.
Commissioner
Yes, I
Bashant.
had my hand raised.
I called on Commissioner Bashant. We'll get to Commissioner Paskowitz after we hear from Commissioner
Just
Bashant.
one quick question. The wetland that's nearest to the addition, is that a surface body of water or just a not seasonal, but storm-related runoff or
In that area, it's a little of
Low-
both.
low
There's-
land.
There's enough vegetation in there now to be, I think originally it was just a drainage channel, but now you have enough vegetated area that it's something of a habitat as well. But it's important to note, I'm not sure if that was made clear, is that it's about 10 feet below the grade of the picture that Eric was just showing us.
Mhm.
So it's down the embankment at the bottom of there,
Yeah.
and that's all protected by the tree line.
So there's no pond there or anything?
There's a pond on the property, but not
I
in this
thought, yeah,
area.
I thought there was one there somewhere,
Yes.
but that's not the spot though.
No, the pond that you're thinking of would be a little bit downstream of this area.
Okay.
We could bring up Google if you want to take a look at
So
it.
it's probably off the property then.
No, the property's large enough that at least some portion of that pond is on it.
Okay, yeah, because I know I've seen ducks there and stuff, but all right, that's all I had.
All right, Commissioner Paskowitz?
Yes, I just want to clarify some area that I see in the staff review on page 2 of the memorandum. It states in the paragraph, additional roof drainage will outlet on the slope draining into the wetland area. Is that what I heard from the presenter?
Yes, the drainage that we are providing, it's actually in this area. It will come from this rooftop. And it will come through here and it will have an outlet protection punch bowl. That is the one that is enlarged in this area. This is what we are providing in here, and it's just, I mean, it's inside of the delimited area that we are having the work, but it won't pass the tree line that I just showed in the picture and that we can see delimited in the survey in this area. And this is designed, again, this is designed through all the Connecticut drainage manual, and all the sizing are designed and analyzed to diminish all velocity or erosion as that could be potentially associated with that.
All right, thank you very much for qualifying that.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Any other commissioners? Any hands up?
No other hands up right now?
All right, with that said, then I'd like the commission to consider moving this on as agent approval. Similar to what we did the last applicant.
I just had one question about
ahead,
the agent
Commissioner Shaw.
approval. Does that speed up the approval period? Because don't we have some rule that we can't approve anything the first at the first meeting?
If it's under full commission, if we're hearing the applicant, then we would normally, if we're not passing it on to agent approval, then we would wait for the public to respond, see if there's any comment from public to go to public hearing. But in this case, we're making a determination whether or not to just send it off to agent approval.
So the agent approval could occur as soon as tomorrow then. That's all I'm asking. It could potentially speeds up
Yes.
the
But
period.
I think.
Not that it will, I'm just saying.
I think I'd like to clarify a point that you brought up. When you typically are receiving an application and then you receive it at that meeting and then you vote on it the following meeting, it has more to do with the statutory time of receiving an application. And then typically these applications come in just before we send out the packets. So that 14-day time period from receipt to initial reception hasn't been met in most cases. Now, because we didn't meet last month,
Mhm.
that time limit has actually met, so you can legitimately vote on it tonight without any downside. There's no appeal process for saying you didn't follow your rules, and it has to do with the fact that we didn't meet in May.
Right, because the applicant or the application itself has been
Received,
received and available for public.
correct.
How would we know that from here? We wouldn't. The application.
It's usually right on the.
The application is stamped in, but you don't have a copy of the application, I suppose?
So just to follow up on that statutory 14 days. So let's say the application in the future, an application came the day before the meeting, we said, oh, we're gonna punt it to agent approval. You would still have to wait 14 days then.
I believe so.
Okay. That's all.
Yep, and I can add in to that, when an agent approval goes out, that does enable a potential appeal back to the commission. So when things are generated towards agent approval and then published in the newspaper, an agent approval can be brought back if appealed.
From the public.
Yes.
Correct.
So the notice, when the notice goes out, it states that?
So when we publish the notice of agent approval in the next regular run of the paper that we
Mhm.
publish in, which I think is the Newington Life, or is it
Rare reminder.
the reminder, which because of the way they're published weekly, it can't be this week, it'll be next week.
Mhm.
And that's if I get the notice to them tomorrow. So if we don't make it, this back and forth we go through, we have to approve the proof from the newspaper. If that carries over into Thursday, then it doesn't get published until the Friday after next. So this is one of the reasons why when we do an agent approval, sometimes it takes as long as it would have to actually go to a meeting. By the time
Could you mention an appeal process? I mean, is that mentioned in the ad itself or in the announcement?
Is it mentioned in the ad?
Typically not.
No, it is mentioned in the statute that governs
Okay.
how we operate.
How would the public be aware of that?
Well, they have to do their own homework.
Sucks to be us.
There is some burden on the part of the public. I'm sorry. That's how that goes.
So, Mr. Chairman, when we're doing an agent approval, we're pretty much assuming that there's not a need for a public hearing. We're automatically making that assumption, you know, not even voting on that. All right. I'm good with it.
Any other comments from commissioners? Okay, seeing none.
Anybody have their hands up?
Would you then, John, give me a motion?
Not seeing any
For
hands up.
agent approval, this is again applicant IW 25-8.
Make a motion to authorize the agent to administratively approve the application IW 25-8. Move to authorize the agent to approve administratively.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Ellis. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, passes unanimously. And you will not need to come back to the commission. You will directly with Chris.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
Very much for your time.
All right. We're gonna move on then. The next item under new business is going to be application IW 25-5 to clear sandbar from stream and restore the eastern and western banks between 14 and 30 Green Lawn Ave, which will assist with flood control. Access needed from 30 Green Lawn within the wetlands and upland review areas in an R12 zone. The applicant is the Town of Newington Highway Department. Contact Rob Hillman, owner Barbara Hope. And note for the record that Chris, our engineer, is going to assist with the presentation on behalf of the town. And present is our town planner, Paul Dixon, who is going to assist with the recording. With that said, I'll turn it over to the applicant for presentation.
Good evening, everybody. Chris Zabidio, Town Engineer.
Rob Hillman, Highway Superintendent.
You want me to roll with it? Okay. So this is obviously application inland wetlands 25-5 at 30 Green Lawn Avenue as stated. So the point of this application is we have a sandbar that has developed in this stretch of the brook. The picture shows this as Millbrook. I can't find anywhere where it says it's Churchill Brook. I can give you that
Schoolhouse
image.
Brook.
Schoolhouse Brook.
That's the property.
I just couldn't find an image that said Schoolhouse Brook, so you have to bear with me. And so this sandbar, we believe, is an accumulation of regular road sediment, sand, and things from the days when we sanded the roads and other sources of sediment that flows down the stream. The brook here takes a little bit of a curve, and that's what allows it to accumulate here. Now, our biggest motivation for removing it now at this time is that we intend to resurface Green Lawn Avenue. And rather than wait till we've got a nice new shiny asphalt surface to then start running heavy equipment over, we'd like to remove this sand from the bank and then restore the embankments on either side of it prior to doing the road resurfacing. We intend to use a turbidity curtain, basically a form of silt fence that has a slightly larger porous opening. It'll still trap the majority of the silt that would get disturbed, but it wouldn't be quite as much as if it were a regular silt fence. A reason for that is if you don't let the water flow through it, then we just back up the water. So the water needs to keep going, but we also don't want to pollute the stream downstream with sediment that's being stirred up during construction. And this is really a pretty straightforward dredging project. It's a very small amount of material we're looking to take out of there. My estimate is it's about, what did I say, 18 cubic yards?
Yep.
So it's like a 15 by 30 foot area approximately, and we're looking at taking it down about 1.5 feet.
And did I read that part of the motivation that the owner at 14 was having some flooding issues?
That has been reported to me, but not by the owner of
Oh,
14,
okay.
so I didn't include it in the
I thought I
conversation.
read that.
Okay, but what we do have the owner at 30's permission, who actually the real estate is on. There was
it 30
definitely
or 14 that you're gonna be entering from?
where we are trying to get permission from 14 to enter from there as well.
Okay.
Now, the reason for that is the embankment on 14's side is being eroded as a result of the sandbar building itself out.
Pushing the,
That's why we're gonna stabilize both banks when we're done. I just haven't touched base with the owner at 14 recently, but we do have a signed permission slip from 30, so we can still do the work because the
how
stream is
wide of
under.
a right of way is does the brook?
The
encompass?
brook is all entirely on 30's property,
Oh, it's on private property.
but to get more easily access the embankment on the 14 side, we need her permission to get onto that too. And we just haven't got that signed yet, so I don't have that permission slip.
So, Chris, in this photograph, that's 14, the blue house,
Yes.
and that's the bank that's eroding and pushing towards their house.
Yes, in this picture, you can see that area on the center and the left. And this is a pretty good example of what this is looking like when the water's high, or high-ish anyway. And then what you can't quite tell is on the embankment on the 14 side, right where the cursor is, there's a stone wall there. I don't know when that was built, but you can see where that has pretty much, again, where the cursor is, it has begun to cut into that embankment there. So rather than waiting until the stone wall has collapsed, this is a good time to do that work as well.
Anything being done to correct the cause of the silting? Whatever it is that's creating this.
Well, we don't use sand on the road anymore.
My guess is that's just years of debris that's accumulated, because there is a pipe that's not you can't see it in the picture, but there is a pipe that outlets underneath the road. So that it's just probably years of debris coming through that pipe. I think it's an 18 inch or 12 inch pipe. 12 inch pipe.
Right. So once it's cleared out, then it probably
Yeah.
won't reoccur.
If you see the black tipped arrows on the blue lines in this picture, it's not a perfect representation of what goes on there, but that's where that pipe outlets. It comes down from the east and it actually dog legs at that point and then dumps into the brook right at that funny little junction there at the edge of the road.
Yeah.
And it could be whatever runoff is coming off the green line too, which obviously wouldn't be much. Because,
So
you know, it's-
kind of like the point of my question is there anything else you guys want to do or need to do while they have the applicant or the application open, so that, it's a.
You have problems upstream?
Okay. Do we have any? Sorry, this is Jim Wells, our highway foreman. He has pretty much some intimate knowledge of the waterways. So.
I learned the waterways under Nelson Nelson.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's not any real problems upstream. There's a little bit of back some trees, but other than that, there's nothing, stuff we're working on a little bit at a time. But I think just like Chris said, that sediment and stuff is just built up over the years. And it just started to take out the property. And when we're down there surveying the area for the road stuff, we noticed the buildup coming out. We noticed the property going, getting eaten away on one side. Just thinking it was a good time to do all the repairs. And the ends of the pipes are a little erosion washed out. Repair those, maybe provide the proper outfall into the brook so don't let anything wash out.
But it's not really gonna prevent any, there's no significant flooding upstream that it's gonna
No.
No.
It's not gonna.
enhance or,
No.
we see how close the water is to the road at Willard and
Yeah.
Robbins, you know?
Yeah.
It's not gonna lower that.
Yeah, this is more redefining the channel to what it once was
Mm.
and fortifying the embankment so we don't end up losing the end of Green Lawn at some point.
You don't need to deepen the channel at all.
Not in this area.
I would say no, because there is a surge bottom underneath it, so we wouldn't wanna dig it out. We don't want to destabilize what's there.
And there's an MDC sewer that runs below this, probably about 8 feet down.
It's 9.5 feet down at the top of their pipe, which they just relined.
Yeah.
And I think the flooding you're talking about is when the sewer line backed up through there.
Yeah.
That's when all those houses right in that area, they all got flooded.
Yeah. it was 4 years
But
ago.
that was a sanitary sewer.
That's sanitary, yeah. It was during a huge.
No, I just meant the tributary, sometime,
Yeah, but
well, we can see how close the water is to.
Yeah, and that was full, and the brook was full right up to the road, there, a huge rain event,
Okay.
that's when they're back.
Coincidentally, the MDC did just reline the stretch of pipe. In fact, they're just wrapping up that project now.
That's a trunk sewer,
Uh,
smaller trunk sewer. It is-
Smaller trunks.
It's an 18-inch trunk line,
Yeah, 18 is pretty big.
Yeah.
it's a pump, it's a pump.
It looks like the residents have been notified and they're okay with this.
Yes,
Objections.
Ms. Hope has signed the application. Or actually my letter to her for permission, that should be in your folder, file there. And then I got busy, so I didn't follow up with 14, but I've spoken to her on the phone and she is on board with the project. Just, I need to get the paper in my hand to say it's okay to enter the
90% of
property.
the work is on this whole property in our right of way. The other 10% is just when we're rebuilding the wall along the 14th property line,
Right away, you mean from the street?
from the street end going.
That's not a street right now, though, right? Yeah.
It doesn't go through.
Yeah.
I think that's what you mean, yeah.
All right. Are you gonna be monitoring the work, Chris?
Well, in this case, because Mr. Wells is so good at it, I'll let him do it.
Okay.
The town is doing all the work.
Yes.
Oh, yes, it'll be done, all done by town staff.
And everything complies with best practices?
Yes.
So again, it almost seems like this might be another one for agent approval,
Or just approve it.
or just approve it tonight.
You said this one came before the 14 days?
Yes.
It did, okay.
The number sequence on these actually indicates to some extent when we receive them. Because they're numbered sequentially when they're
There's no
received.
date on it.
There should
You
have
have
been.
it, but we don't necessarily have it.
Would you guys like to get those in the
That'd
future?
be a good idea.
Yeah, we should have the full application with the dates
We can put them in the package.
stamped on them.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add, it's
Yes.
for the statutes, chapter 330 on that one, when an agent approval actually cannot take place within a wetland or water course. So it does have to be a commission approval.
Okay, thank you.
Good point, thank you.
All right.
So it could be in an upland review area, but not in an actual water
Correct.
body.
Okay.
Interesting.
All right.
Yeah, that comes up in the
Kind of makes sense.
training for the commissioners from UConn.
All right.
Paul saying it reminded me of that.
Any of the commissioners online have their hands raised? Have any questions?
I currently do not see any hands raised.
All right, commissioners online, any comments? All right, seeing none.
I'm just,
Go ahead, Commissioner Ellis.
just kind of curious that there isn't a policy of doing anything with that water as it comes out of that pipe. You know what I mean? That there's no like strainer or anything like that, any kind of a, I forget what you'd call it, like an overflow tank.
So if we were going to do a major reconstruction of a storm line, we would entertain the idea of putting a water quality structure on there. This line is not exactly what I would call major. It takes a relatively small area of town and drains it into the brook. It's not to say there wouldn't be a value in it, but this now crosses into the cost benefit analysis aspect of, is it worth it to us to pay the $8,000 or $10,000 to put a water quality device in the road prior to repaving the road for a relatively small amount of water? So if you're asking my opinion, is it worth the money? I'd say no. But
It
I'm
wouldn't
sure,
prevent the sediment buildup anyway.
Well, we don't
That's what I
use,
was wondering.
yeah, we don't use sand on the road anymore, so our contribution wouldn't be there. And so whatever natural sedimentation is in the water from major flooding events, this wouldn't have helped that either.
Thank you.
All right, no other questions, comments?
Commissioner
Hey,
Bichette?
this is Greg Ostrinsky. So stuff like this, just for those of you if you don't know, these are features called a cut bank and a point bar, and rivers kind of naturally meander like this and deposit on the inside of a curve and cut on the outside of a curve. So it's not necessarily coming from the storm system. Could just be naturally vegetation, stuff like that from upstream.
I agree.
Thank
I
you,
just had
Commissioner.
one
Commissioner Bichette?
question. I mean, you obviously want to do this sooner than later. I mean, is this something you plan?
Yes, we have our milling contractor scheduled, currently tentatively scheduled, weather dependent, of course, for the middle of August.
Okay.
So, yeah, the sooner the better that we could get in there.
I'm just saying if it was better to, wait a month, but I don't see nothing's gonna change in that month's time anyway, so.
No, it seems like the public involved has already been notified. And they're in agreement with the project. Chris, any special conditions for this?
The turbidity curtain is a little different than normal construction practices. Like I said, it's roughly similar to a silt fence, but it's placed across the water course. And what its purpose is as they're excavating out the material, there's going to be silt released. And so the turbidity curtain's purpose is to catch that silt before it
Is that
travels down the
curtain part of the plan already?
Yeah, well, the plan that we provided to you is pretty rudimentary, but there is a line on there showing that. I did not give you a detail of what it looks like, but it's a readily available item in places like.
Do we need to condition that curtain?
We
Or-
can condition it. We can condition that we use a turbidity curtain.
All right, so we'll put in condition 11 then.
Yep.
A turbidity curtain will be used.
Yep.
During the project.
It used to be A.H. Harris, so it's a white cap now. Or Ferguson probably has
Ferguson
it.
would probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Ferguson.
White cap, yes.
Very good, right?
All right, then, if the commission's okay, I'll read the motion since I, just penned in another, special condition here. So this is for application IW 25-5. Making a motion to approve application IW 25-5 at 30 Green Lawn Ave with the 10 standard conditions per section 11-10 of the regulations and any other commission or any other conditions that the commission may require as properly mentioned and approved. We add condition 11, which is a turbidity curtain will be used during the project. Can I get a second on the motion?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Ellis. All in favor of the motion, say aye. 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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. All set. Thank you. Okay. All right. We're gonna keep it rolling and move on to item D under new business. Application IW 25-6 to provide paving, grading, utility and storm drainage improvements for the bus parking lot at 200 Garfield Street, FKA 206 Garfield Street, within the upland review area in the R12 zone. Applicant, Town of Newington, contact Chris Zibadio, owner, Town of Newington, Town Hall and Police Department. Again, Chris will be the applicant here, and Paul will be assisting on the recording of the meeting. So go ahead, Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Chris is a video town engineer for the record again. Application 25-6, 200 Garfield or 200, formerly known 206 Garfield. That's the address of the old garage that was there. So the project overall is the mill and overlay of Garfield Street with minor reconstruction of the adjacent parking lots. And the major, well, I'll get to that in a minute. So the mill and overlay, the reconstruction of the parking lots, the community connectivity grant that we received in 2018, we're finally implementing with this project. And that's primarily bike lanes and sidewalks and rapid flashing beacons for the crosswalks. So this is the big project is the entire length of Garfield is going to be milled and overlaid. That's a repavement. And all of the adjacent parking lots, the town hall parking lot by the library, the parking lot down by Willard Street, and then the bus garage project. So this particular part of the project that is in front of you tonight is the part of the bus garage and the road that is at Millbrook there by the bus garage itself, where we have the crossing there. And what we are doing with this project, as the Board of Ed has requested us to pave the gravel parking lot. They've had incidences in the winter of people slipping and falling because of the uneven surfaces. And the other aspects of when you have a gravel parking lot, you can't clear the snow and ice like you can with a paved surface. So they initially requested this based on that. When I received this as a part of the project, my take on it was we needed to do something with the fuel products that leak off of any motor vehicle, especially a bus. And so if we're going to pave it, we're going to treat it. And so we're adding a hydrodynamic separator to the outlet of the catch basin system that exists in that parking lot now. There's 3 catch basins. The one that's closest to the brook will be replaced with one that will separate the oil products, any sand and grit that comes off the road, any floatables. It becomes a maintenance project. You have to clean these periodically. But since we have them in town and we make other developers do them, it makes sense to me to add one there. We're going to grade this parking area so that all of the water in the paved area and from Garfield Street will flow towards that catch basin system and be captured and treated through that. We are also able to control to some extent the extent of this paved area. Where that parking area is now being gravel, you don't line stripe it. But once we pave it, we can line stripe it. And by line striping it, we actually are able to reduce the area that they're using for the parking area now by over 6,000 square feet. So that area will be restored to lawn area and part of the upland review area. Part of it is in the upland review area. In fact, the bulk of the 6,000 square feet is in the upland review area closer to the pond. And then in addition to this, all the other benefits, we're going to take the overhead power that goes to the lighting and put it in conduits underneath the road and the parking lot and expand the security lighting to 3 poles, one at the back of the lot, one at each end of the lot. And that will also allow them to have better security cameras to protect the assets that are there from each of these poles. And that's, this is the positive aspect of the project, that we're reducing the size of the lot. We're adding better security to the buses and we're treating the runoff from it. And that's the highlights of why we're in front of the commission tonight. The rest of the project outside of that really isn't part of the Conservation Commission's interest, just this part here by the brook.
Chris, a couple of years ago, we heard an application for the impound area. And I think that's somewhere in here.
Well, so the impound area is, yes, where Paul's circling with his cursor. We're not in this project doing anything with that, with the one exception being one of the new poles is going to be placed next to the fencing there for the bus garage. And it gives us the opportunity to put a security light and camera on that pole covering the impound area. But beyond that, we're not doing anything else except for one additional request that came from the police department, is that if we can provide a conduit from that pole to the front corner of the impound lot, right by the hand there, for any future power they may want, if they want to put a, electrically operated gate on that, as opposed to what they have now. So this is a small ask at this point, is to add a conduit for power that might or might not ever happen. But we're not doing anything else with that. We're not resurfacing it. We're not replacing the fences. It's not even our land, to be honest with you. It belongs to CLMP and we lease it. It used to be the power station for the trolleys.
I think the seal, even want to keep it.
That is a
Contaminated.
question I don't
The
have.
town
an answer
doesn't want it.
for. Big one?
Was contaminated, so the town was reluctant to take possession of it.
Gotcha.
I don't know if it's still contaminated, but I think there was an issue with that. Yeah.
That's a good,
Go ahead, Commissioner.
good thing to know
Yeah.
though.
I have a little bit of a bombshell though. I hate to throw water on the plan and you weren't here and neither was Paul. When this property was cleaned up, we had a garage there originally. We had a above ground diesel tanks. You know the story about the spill and the cleanup.
Yep.
But I raised this probably a couple of years ago, shortly after the board came for some other application. And I said, well, we going to restore the original, call it a vegetated buffer or whatever, the buffer between the parking, where the buses were parking and that little tributary that runs in the back over there, which you could call it upland review from Millbrook or this tributary itself. And they said they were gonna get overlays and they were gonna look at it and try to get it back to where it was. And they just backed out and we never heard from them again. So all my entire life, there's always been one row of buses from the street line, you know, which the street line is quite, the right of way is pretty wide over there. You can see where those catch basins are. That's approximately the street line. I think you show it in the plan.
They're actually set back a little bit, but yes.
Yeah, pretty close. And so historically, that's always been one row of buses. Right now, we're still pushed back like 3 rows of buses. So, you know, I think that we have to restore that to where it was originally. Otherwise, then the town and the board or whatever the property owner is, the town would have to apply for an expansion of that, even though it's already done, but we can't just claim by default because it had to be done for the cleanup. But that would also require an 824 because
We are doing an 824
Yeah, so you're doing an 824 for the improvements,
for the whole project.
okay? But based on expanding because you're talking about reducing it. So you're bringing some of the buffer back, but we're
Correct.
still 2 times bigger than it used to be before the cleanup, before the pre-cleanup and post-cleanup. So that's my concern.
Okay. It will still be 2 rows of buses. There'll be a front row and a back row.
There was always 1 row of buses. That's all it
Okay.
was. So it was about 50 feet. Buses
Alright.
like 40 feet now. I've been working on that property over the years for the board, so I know for sure. And just observing it my entire life, there was always, the garage was 1 bus deep and there was storage for about an 8-foot trailer behind that. And there was 1 row of buses from the right-of-way line back.
Okay, so what
So
we are
we're-
proposing here, which doesn't really show in this plan, I didn't come prepared with the parking lot layout, but big chunk of the community connectivity grant part of this project is the bike lanes
Mhm.
and pedestrian access. So what we're doing along Garfield is we're narrowing the travel ways to 11 feet, they're currently 16 in most areas. And that gives us 5 feet to provide a bus lane, a bike lane, a 3-foot bike lane with a 2-foot gap between them and the motorists on both sides of the road. And then from the backside of the bike lane on the bus parking area side, we're going to have a painted area for pedestrian access. So in other words, a painted sidewalk. And then coming back from that, there's another small 2-foot buffer area. Then the first row of buses, I don't remember if that's the smaller ones or the bigger ones. I have apparently 3 different sizes of buses I had to account for. But we'll provide that parking area along the front edge of where the paved sidewalk, painted sidewalk will be. And then there's a fairly
Chris, if you'd like,
large.
I can bring up the plans if you'd like.
Oh, there you go. This is why I keep you around.
Yeah, like I said, there's quite a wide right of way there, so you won't have to reduce the travel lanes much. It's only a single lane anyway, but my
Right.
concern is still that parking lot. We've doubled it in size. It's actually more than doubled in size, But even your give back, bringing some back there,
Mhm.
it's still twice as big as it always was, so.
So I want to establish, I need a clarification here to establish the record. Is this
that the one, Paul?
application?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So this is what it's going to look like when it's done. It is, and you can see from the limit of the gravel in the back, that's what we're reducing. And this is what we'll be providing. I'm not disputing anything that you're saying about the history of this. But for my taking this on as part of the
I
project.
understand
it
that.
was
That's why I said that right from the get-go.
Right, provide the service that.
But I don't think
currently
that,
have.
but I don't think that default, we win because of the cleanup, and then we just say, okay, we got all this extra space. Because I actually brought this up at least a couple of years ago, and Eric was gonna look into it and get some overlays and do the aerials. I sent the chairman just a rough side by side, and you could see the dramatic difference of pre and post cleanup there. And so it never got restored to where it was originally.
All right, so I need a clarification on the scope of this application because it appears to me from the description that we're talking about repaving of the parking lot at 200 Garfield. However, I kind of heard and I see on this plan, it looks like, all of Garfield is kind of like outlined.
Well,
So,
Garfield within the upland review area. The parking lot and the road within the upland review area is the scope of the application. Because outside of the upland review area,
Nothing else is.
so your request is more than just the parking lot. We're talking about like everything in blue here that's on this
yes.
is what's in scope. So that's
Well,
really the
that-
pavement of
Paul, can you bring that
almost,
one back up again?
this looks like it's the repaving of Garfield Street.
So not everything that's in blue, because everything in blue is the pavement. So the line that looks like a red-brown here is the upland review area. That's the limits of this commission's jurisdiction.
Right, but can you just, I need an overlay that shows me the area that we're this application is focused on.
All right, so where
Because
the
everything
cursor,
else is Garfield Street, and if that's not part of this application, I don't want to see it.
well, Garfield is, I included the part of Garfield that's within the upland review area in the request. Because it's in the upland review area. So that's that area where Paul's cursor is now.
Yeah,
And it crosses over the bridge and includes a part of the parking area and the road that's on the right side. And then there's it's the west actually, but to the north of this picture, there's part of that blue-green between the upland review area and the limits of what will be the paved area. And then that green area in the back that's just hash marked.
so the red lines are the upland review
Yes,
designation, and everything within the red lines is what we're looking to approve.
yes.
Okay, anything outside of those red lines that's on Garfield Street is out of scope.
Out of scope, yes.
Okay. All right,
So you
so,
can see how the upland review makes this funny shape on both sides. It's kind of, I think it has more to do with the road itself being a little bit higher than what would have been the flood limits if it were to flood. I would guess that's.
How can it not be upland review if it's right next to the brook there?
Well, it is, where the cursor just was, is right next to the brook.
Mhm.
And then to the rear there where the cursor was, is within the upland review for the tributary that's between the parking lot and Willard Street.
Mhm.
Right.
So, if I may,
Commissioner Bashan.
The
Typic-
yellow is the wetland limit itself.
typically, we wouldn't be approving road repaving or typical road improvements, even if they're in a upland review area, is that correct?
Correct. It would be a maintenance issue.
Yeah.
But because we are doing the parking lot,
Mhm.
and that is new.
Yep.
I chose to bring it in front of the commission.
So I still have to go back to my concern is if you look at that north side of that upland review area in the parking lot, that was never paved or never improved originally. So that was entirely outside of the improvements on the property. So whether they subconsciously, did it intentionally when they originally started parking buses there, because that was before my time. But since I was a little kid, I could always remember there was always one row of buses. And the rest of it was woods to that little tributary in the back. There's a small stream that runs in the back. That's why that upland review area goes all the way up to Willard on that north side there. But that was never part of any improvement on the property. So
Okay.
even though you gave back a little bit there, you said that's 6,000 feet. That means that there's another, whatever, 15,000 feet there that's still, you're still planning to pave that was never improved originally. That's my concern.
Well, the new part that's being paved that's within the upland review area is probably closer to 3,000.
Well, then you said that the green hash mark is 6,000. I'm just basing it on that.
Yes.
Okay, if that's
All
6,000,
right, So
then
we can say they're even.
I'd say,
6,000
I'd say it's considerably more, but if you wrapped it right around.
Well,
But
you
anyway.
get into the point where you get into the existing Garfield Street. So that's why I'm saying it's smaller than you think it is.
Well, that's my concern, so that's why I said it's kind of a bombshell, but I think we're putting the cart before the horse because we've never had an upland, we never had a wetland permit to expand that parking lot, and we never had the 824 to expand that parking lot, so. The fact that it's expanded occurred because of a diesel fuel cleanup. And again, I don't think we just go to default, okay, now it's ours, we do what we want with it. That's my concern. I don't know what others feel about it, but the reason that I'm kind of passionate about it now, because I actually raised this question 2 years ago when we were supposed to hear back from them at that time, so.
Mr. Chairman, just so you know, Commissioner Ostrinsky has had his hand raised for a little bit online.
Okay, we'll go to Commissioner Strinsky and then Commissioner Ellis.
Hey, thank you for that. Quick question for Chris. Do we do any stormwater mapping for the bus facility at the moment? Or sorry, not mapping, stormwater sampling?
That's a good question. We do stormwater sampling as part of the MS4 that we just started to redo this past year. I don't know, Greg, you probably don't know this, but the town did not participate in the MS4 for about 6 years under the direction of a former town manager. Didn't think it was worth the trouble. And when I retired, we ended up with a notice of violation from DEP. So that prompted us to get back on board with the MS4 program. And part of that was last year we had a consultant do sampling. I do not believe this is one of the sampling locations because by comparison to some of the others, it's pretty small as far as potential runoff. But if it is of interest to this commission, we can have them look at this as a potential site. We actually focus more on like the Stam Road area and the Berlin Turnpike area, not overlap with the DOT's own MS4, but areas that were more heavily commercial and or industrial than this bus parking area is. I mean, this is 40 buses compared to say Stam Road where we have a lot of contributory pollution in that neighborhood.
Yeah. No, so this is so I've in my line of work I've done a lot of stormwater industrial permits here in Connecticut. One of my previous clients at a previous job was actually a bus yard in another town in Connecticut. And they needed, I think, quarterly stormwater sampling. So if we're redoing the parking lot, I'm not sure of the exact requirements off the top of my head. It's been a little bit since I've done stormwater, but might be a good thing to look at the Connecticut Deep industrial general permit for the discharge of stormwater associated with industrial activity. I'll see if I can take a look tonight too and get it over to you. But
we do have two town facilities that are under an industrial permit, the highway garage and the transfer station. This area is not one of the ones I'm aware of anyway. And to be honest with you, I'm not quite sure if we have to do one, if it's going to be ours to manage or if it's going to be BOE's to manage.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. And like I said, it's been a little bit since I've done one, so I'm not sure if this would fall into the requirements, but might be something to look at.
Okay.
I had one more question.
All
Mr.
right,
Chairman.
well, I'm gonna go to
Oh, yeah,
Commissioner
sorry.
Ellis.
I forgot my question, but I will agree with you though. I forgot my question now. I was listening to
All right,
that.
let me talk and then you'll think of it. again.
Right, yeah,
All right,
please go ahead.
If you don't mind.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Commissioner Bashan.
Chris, on that, when we're looking at the parking lot, you have two measurements here, the 120-foot marks, 120 foot. Is that to the property line or is that just to the edge of the street?
That's just to the edge of the proposed paved parking limits.
Okay, but the actual property line is back there closer to the catch basins, correct?
The actual property line is back closer to the brook on Willard Street.
No, the property line that would travel parallel to Garfield Street, between Garfield Street and the bus parking lot.
Oh, I think I see what you're saying. Yes, if you look at that dashed line there,
Right around the catch
I
basin.
think that's what you're asking about. Yes.
Okay,
That would be the difference between the road right of way and the other town-owned property. So the town owns the bus parking area.
yeah, I know, that's,
Et cetera.
I know it's town on town, so no one's gonna dispute, because right now they're parking in that right of way regardless anyway. So they're well over that right of way. They're well into the town right of way with the buses now. So you could just look at the aerial views and see that.
Yes.
But I keep going back to, even from that line back, it was about 50 feet. So if you look at what we have here, it's, right now, you're probably at about 100. So I keep saying, not all of that is upland review area, but we still have expanded that parking lot almost double, I would say. So that's why I think that 824, I mean, that's not our purview, but I think that's why I say, I think we're putting the cart before the horse. It seems like there's other things that would have had to happen before we decide to say, go ahead and pave.
All right, so Commissioner Ostrowski's got me thinking now about stormwater. Currently, this is unpaved gravel. There's no catch basin, right? So the
There are three
stormwater,
catch basins.
there is one?
And the gravel area does drain into that now,
Okay, so the gravel area is
but
draining
it's
to,
not as smooth a flow, so to speak,
Right.
as we would have with a paved.
but I gotta imagine some of this is perking into the ground as well.
Right now, it's all likely under, well, let's say under non-rain events, whatever's leaking off those buses now is going into the gravel.
I'm not, well, other than what's leaking, okay? So that's a separate issue than where I'm going.
Mhm.
Where I'm going is the amount of water, stormwater that would, if we pave this, would then increase and go into the wetlands, right? Because you're gonna discharge this,
Because we're grading it to the catch basins. We're changing
right, you're
the,
gonna grade it to the catch basin. The catch basin goes to where?
it goes to the new water quality device before outletting into the brook by the bridge.
Right, but it's still potentially outletting into the Mill Brook, right?
Correct.
So I gotta imagine going from a gravel parking lot to a large paved parking lot, that you're gonna have a more permeable, not non-permeable surface, which is going to increase the amount of water going into the stormwater system.
Yes, that's why the water quality device.
So my concern is the amount of volume increase in stormwater rather than what could potentially be absorbed into the ground and remain on site rather than being discharged.
I don't think too much of it goes into the ground because it's pretty hard. When we did the test pits to determine if there was adequate sub-base for the road and to determine if it had any perk capacity, I can tell you from personally standing in those three test pits that replacement material that was brought in after the contaminated material was removed is fairly solid. I mean, I'm talking brick-like solid. So I don't know how much of it is going into the earth as much as it is flowing outward anyway. The big difference is that what we would call time of concentration would become shorter. The water would flow through the pavement to the water quality treatment device quicker than it would flow from the gravel to the pavement, to the catch basins, to the brook. But I wouldn't say it's a substantial amount. It's looking like maybe 15 minutes faster. And that means after even a relatively minor storm, it's a moot point.
Commissioner Pascucci here.
All right, go ahead, Commissioner.
I'm in agreement with this pavement concentration on all counts. One of public safety is best in practice for pavement. for the bus discharge and the bus entry, and the people and personnel moving towards the buses when there's a lack of snow with pavement versus gravel. Ice could be managed better, snow removal is managed better, and it's for the best interest of everyone in public safety for this bus pavement. That's my overall take on it.
So I'm gonna just ask you for clarification. Are you saying that paving the parking lot is beneficial or leaving it gravel is beneficial?
Paving it is beneficial on all counts.
Okay, thank you.
I'm still hung up on that, that buffer that was never restored, so I can't.
And it makes sense.
Our part of it, at least that part of it, we have no control over the 824 and all that, so I shouldn't even bring that up. But that part of it that we are responsible, and 824 is a state statute too. Besides, it's not a town, it's not just a town ordinance, that's a state statute. And I think it applies here, but again, that's not our purview, but our purview is that part of that's still being proposed to be paved, that originally, whatever, 8 or 10 years ago, was never paved or was never improved in any way. It was a buffer, it was a natural buffer.
For the benefit of the commission and the public, Chris or Paul, could you explain to us what the 824 is since it's been mentioned?
Yep, so an 824 referral is, the town of Newington is exempt from its zoning regulations. Most municipalities do have regulations in there, but when an 824 is pretty much whenever you sell a property, buy a property, lease is one condition of it. But another condition of it is if you substantially improve a property that's owned by the town for park use or any other municipal use, gets referred to the planning commission. Now, it's not the planning commission doesn't have the ability to deny an 824 application. What it is, it's basically advisory. But when an 824 goes to the planning commission, if they basically look at it for general comments and recommendations, but it's primarily for conformance with the plan of conservation and development and other town plans. So that's really what they're looking at. Does it fit our comprehensive plan for this use? You could see how that would be like selling a property that could be next to a park. Okay, no, maybe that is not, in our best interest. When you get into these smaller items that are kind of like improving a parking lot or doing that, unless you had like a natural area where it said, do not disturb, do not do this, and that was in the plan, there's typically not much in the larger comprehensive plans that covers it. So when you get these smaller applications, it's reviewed by the planning commission. But again, the planning commission provides their recommendation to the council. If a planning commission says we do not recommend this, it just moves it from a majority vote to the council to a two-thirds majority to that super majority for an approval. So the planning commission cannot deny an application. They just basically provide that recommendation for or against. And the only implication is that 2/3 over a simple majority.
The whole point is that it has to go through that process and it actually has to go through the TPZ and the town council, which we're not doing any of that right now.
We are doing that. It's just not before you yet. You're first.
But not for this expansion, not for the idea of what I keep talking
Well,
about.
it's for the whole project. The 824 referral is for the entire plan. The plan is over the 7 or so years since the community connectivity grant was applied for and received, this project went from just being bike lanes and sidewalks to being, okay, now enough time has passed that we have to maintain the road. So Garfield Street became a mill and overlay, and then the parking lots, like the one that was used for the staging area for this building, never got redone afterwards. So we included that into it. And then the other parking lot at the far end by the Willard end, which was the old roadway, never got any maintenance. So we included that into it. So this project kept growing and growing and growing. More and more pieces were added to it.
I'm still not sure what part of that would have triggered the 824 in your mind, though.
Actually, none of that would have triggered an 824. What triggered the 824 was when we put the whole package together, all these pieces together into one big application. The discussion came up as to whether or not we should have an 824 for it.
Just to be safe.
One perspective on it was this is all maintenance. It shouldn't have to go to 824.
But I would
Another
think-
was we need to be more conservative because we need to be the example. The town needs to do things a certain way to look like we're doing things correctly. So the decision was made to make the 824 request and the referral so that we appear to be above board in all things. So that's why this project is going to, it's not like when we took the pedestrian bridge project to an 824 referral. A bridge is a structure specifically outlined in the 824 statute. So that was obvious. That had to go, even though it was no impact whatsoever to anything other than replacing an old structure with a new one. Another example of something that wouldn't require an 824 is we mill and overlay roads every year. We don't go to 824 referrals or even to this commission for the regular routine maintenance. So my take on it was this is routine maintenance, but for appearance sake, we make an 824 request so that these kinds of things going forward don't become what they are now.
If I may. So the 824 is what brings you here today?
No,
in front of us?
No, the fact that I'm doing work in the upland review area as part of this project, new work, in other words, that specifically that bus parking lot. If this was just Garfield Street, we wouldn't be here.
Well, and that's what I mean, but I mean, if you didn't have the 824, would you be here?
Yes.
It's my fault for bringing up the whole
No,
824.
that's fine, because
I'm trying to understand.
I would rather have this all come out.
Yeah,
to be
if
honest with you.
I have one suggestion, if I may, Mr. Chairman, or a suggestion and see if there's a consensus on this. If to kind of confirm if I'm even correct in my what I've been saying about that buffer being lost from, you know, pre to post diesel fuel cleanup. If we can get a drawing or an overlay, you know, image, that's what was discussed with Eric, he was gonna try to show us that. And then we could determine, am I right or am I completely wrong on that? Because like I said, I can't approve something that's gonna pave in an area that was originally a buffer and just turned out to be a parking lot, you know, so.
Well, I for one wouldn't question your memory of that being.
Well, I do.
A
I question
vegetated
my own.
area.
I want to prove myself wrong. You know, I try to prove myself wrong.
I mean,
first.
we could call up aerial photographs from Google and compare them that way if you'd like to, or what's that other one that you use? all the
Near
time?
map.
Near map.
Or
I mean,
AGIS.
we
That's,
could
that's the one
Is that
from,
AGIS?
Aegis. That's the one I use. It's the one that the town uses.
But let me
too.
ask you this, if we prove that that was treed once,
Yeah,
what's that gonna do for us tonight?
I'd have to leave that up to the commission, but I think that if we say we're going from a treed buffer to a parking lot, then there would have to be some an application to do that, or yeah, I would think. If anyone.
I
has
think this
has an opinion on
application
that.
is that. I think the fact that I'm sitting here tonight in front of you instead of over there with Paul is that application. Now, I could be wrong on that, but that's my take on it.
I don't know. It's
Well, it's a little.
I don't want to talk about how the bus garage parking area got to be the shape it is, because I don't have any history on that. I don't know, other than I'm aware of the leak and what precipitated all of that. I'd have to live under a rock not to know that, but my point is, it is what it is now. And my job here is basically a town engineer, as an asset manager for the town, is to improve our assets. So whether that, for instance, even if the buses go away, which I know is something that some people in the community want, that doesn't change the fact that right now I have to deal with this. And that's what I'm doing. I'm in front of this commission tonight to deal with that parking area and make an improvement or the betterment of the town. That's my goal. That's what I'm doing.
What I see is concern though, if that paved area could come back and be outside on that, just on that north part, outside of the, the buffer zone.
If I could have pulled it out of the upland review entirely, I would have. The problem is we just have 40 buses. They won't fit if I do that.
Right. So Chris, you can show us an overlay of what it was prior to that fuel spill.
Near
Yeah.
map and give us a little quick history of the aerials.
And just
It
thinking
won't be
ahead, you know,
scientific.
if this lot was expanded.
I believe it was. I mean, by the time
Yeah,
I got done. pulling
I
all
don't
the-
doubt that it was. Whether intentionally or not, it has the appearance of a land grab. But my question is, if if it was to go back to its original size, would that be adequate for the buses?
No.
That doesn't have to be as large as what's being proposed.
What we're proposing is basically the minimum that will accommodate our current bus fleet. Now, if we do at some point in the future, find a place to send them, this area then becomes parking for the park for the big events. So I would say one way or another, and in fact, they do use that area for parking for the big events because they run the buses away for things like the extravaganza and the other events that recreation and parks do.
Are they still parking buses at the high school too, or no?
Well, they do when they have to provide additional parking for park events. So they'll run them up to the high school when they're doing.
Or before a winter storm, I see, because they have that cleaner,
plow
that
it,
cleaning
yeah.
thing over there.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the one saving grace, what you just said about, you know, if the buses did go away someday. Because I would hate to pave it and then say, oh, we're not, now we don't need it anymore, but what you said about parking for the park, that would be, that's a
Yeah.
kind of a saving grace for me, but
When
I still stuck on that, that we never restored, we took it and, it was intentional because it had to be intentional because they were they had to clean the diesel fuel, but then we just took advantage or, exploited it and said, oh, now we have a bigger parking area. So that's the part that I'm stuck on.
Can I ask a question too?
Go ahead,
Is
Commissioner
there
Ellis.
for cleaning? I'm sorry, I should have waited. For cleaning, for that oil spill cleanup, is there an application for that and then requirements that they have had restored that and they did? Or how's that work?
I can tell you from what I understand is that the restoration was completed per whatever conditions were put on it. Now, I think this was something that was managed by DEP. If I had the time, I would go find those documents and provide them to you. I've just been real busy like getting this plan ready to go out to construction. But I believe that what was required was done. They excavated down at least 4.5 feet, which is DEP's standard. If you recall, when we had the meeting with the people from Cedar Point, they talked about their ELUR requirements, 4.5 feet down, all that material was removed, just like in this case, new material was brought in. It's really good material, by the way. I mean, from having stood in those test pits and seen it myself up to my knees, this is some really good gravel. It locks up tight. But they did in fact cover an area larger than John is describing. There's no doubt in my mind that what he's describing was smaller at one time. I don't have personal memory of it, but.
Yep, so I can show some aerials. Again, this would only be anecdotal. We would want to overlay them and really look at them because it's very hard to see on aerials where the tree line really ends.
Can I just add one thing about what Chris was just talking about? And part of the reason that we might be at this impasse is because the town manager handled it for the town side. And we heard I think you were there at that time, Jeff, but they pretty much took it out of our hands. We had no control over it. Town manager said, no, we're not getting any permission from we're not going through wetlands. I'm going to handle it. So that's
Which
how it
town
occurred.
manager
So
was
there was no conditions on our part, in other words.
Which town
Restaurant-
manager was that?
The woman, what was her name? I'm sorry.
Tanya?
She was our former clerk, Tanya Lane. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
She
So
kind of took over and took it out of our hands.
it's a little hard to see, but it shows up in blue. You can kind of see, again, we don't know exactly how far it went past here. This kind of looks like a little shadow, so it might have gone a little further here, but that's back in 2017. And then you can see the cleanup in 2018. Whether this was actually behind the building more, we don't know. More aerials will need to be looked at, other plans. And you can kind of see moving forward. So again, it looks like this is pretty well where it was. You have this notch right here, which is interesting because it's actually kind of being returned to that when we go back and look at the plan. This is one of the areas where Chris is actually revegetating and some of these area right up here. So again, it's hard to tell exactly where it was, but that you can see kind of the difference. That's kind of moving forward. So again, if we go back, that's all been pretty stable. But if you go back to it, just to look at, again, it's hard to tell the exact extent. where this ended in this dark area of the trees, what exactly was behind the building. This looks pretty stable on this side to the northern part. But if we go back kind of, if you keep in mind this notch right here in some of the areas where you see kind of the buses on the later ones. We'll go to the current one now. See, we'll go to the most recent.
Now look there, how much space there is. That's a full-size bus along the tree line. And you could stack about 3 of them or more.
And also these aerials will cant a little. So
Yeah,
again, it's
yeah, yeah.
we're dealing with lines that on this one are about
Like you
5
said,
feet
it's
thick.
anecdotal, and that's what I'm going by too, and I'm making estimates, but it's considerable in my mind, so I would like to see the actual data.
And what I could do
And
is
again, maybe the reason that we're at this stage is because we never had any conditions. We were not involved at all with that cleanup and restoration, so.
So again, if you keep in mind that notch, which is interesting to see,
That's my own concern.
it's kind of like
have to see what the
this
consensus of
notch is being
everyone
returned. That was that notch you kind of saw on the old. This is pretty much where the line was. So it looks like this area is being returned that potentially could have been there before. And then area on the back. So again, that could be looked at again. It won't be as precise as a survey, of course. But you can kind of see that at least in that area, there is some being, returned.
So Chris, I'm not a big fan of asphalts, just because the heat it generates, the runoff. Are there any low impact measures that can be applied? Some other type of surface that's,
If this was a standard parking lot, we could use one of the permeable pavement products that are out there. The problem is it is a bus parking lot and these are heavy point loads. And so I would say in terms of providing a product that's not going to break down in the next, 5 years, based on how tough that stone is, at the gravel that was used to bring in to replace the contaminated material. Asphalt's really the best product for this.
and the reseeded area, does it have to be grass or can it be something else?
It can be something
That
else.
doesn't need any maintenance? There's another point, I want to make is I see these guys from, Parks and Rec and Highway Department all day long on their mowers. The mowers are going all day long, cutting the fields. The weed whackers are going. It just seems excessive that we spend so much time maintaining lawn space. In a space like this, I can't see any reason to maintain that. Like we would never use that for any kind of recreation. So there's something else you could plant there that requires no maintenance.
Well, it happens that Mr. Dixon has a background in landscape architecture.
Yep.
And I rely on that a lot. So if you'd like to make a condition for approval, that we look at low or no impact or
Yep.
maintenance type shrubbery or something like that to plant in there.
This is the, I would just add, this is the one where I like to pull out of my pocket a pollinator pathway. When you're talking about again, meadow, low maintenance, mow once or twice a year. What really happens actually with the meadow is you just have to watch out and, pay attention to what bird species come in and out of it, which and what time you actually should mow it and shouldn't mow it, just in case anyone move into it. Likelihood of something on this one, because of the proximity to the buses and the amount of activity on the site, you wouldn't see a lot of nesting in a habitat like that so adjacent to it. But I would recommend pretty much pollinator plantings, and that way it could be mowed once or twice a year, depending on the schedule. Reduces the burden on the Parks Department, and it also increases the amount of plants available for the wildlife. So those are always kind of win-win situations when you have an area that you do not want to maintain at all times.
Okay. Are there any suggestions for zero maintenance?
Well, when it comes to landscape, there's almost no such thing as zero maintenance. Whatever you plant there, especially on the edge of a buffer like this, could likely be overtaken by vines, bittersweet, poison ivy. Having the actual mowing might actually make it easier to maintain overall than, say, a herbaceous plantings, or, the concern here of putting trees is you wouldn't want trees overhanging the buses as much. You're going to have sap cleaning issues. I could see the BOE having some concerns with that just for long term. But,
We
yeah,
did
as far
just
as,
recently Take some trees down for that reason.
yeah,
They
the,
got diseased and they were.
yeah, the only
Dropping
zero
limbs.
maintenance thing is pretty much, gravel. But then again, that doesn't provide the same type of benefits. And again, I would recommend a more of a meadow
have that.
mow once or twice a year.
We already have the gravel.
We already
Yep.
have the gravel. I'm trying to reduce the gravel, to be honest.
Yeah, plants always need some love, some maintenance.
Anything else from the commission?
I would ask Paul if he could bring up those current photos, those current aerials, if you still have them. It shows the whole row of buses against that north side.
Yep, and that's April 9th, 2025.
So I don't understand why that whole row of buses can't be pulled out,
It is,
pulled south,
it is.
that little bit, but I'm saying it could be pulled out as to be completely out of that upland review area.
Can't make it completely. The amount of space the bus needs to pull out of a parking space is larger than for a normal car.
But that's only because we want to go with 2 or 3 rows of buses, but originally there was never 2 or 3 rows of buses, so.
Well, okay, like I said before, I have to accommodate parking spaces for 40 buses.
Hmm.
So, Paul, can you bring back the bus
So
parking plan?
before you move on, that blue line through the tops of the buses, that's where the pavement is going to be.
No, that's the old limit.
Oh,
So
that's
that,
from the-
that's the guesstimate, I would call it, of the old limit back to,
Uh-huh. And
There
you
you
have an
go. So-
overlay with picture of the buses and the new paved area?
back to this point, back to 2017. And, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to, Commissioner Anderson has had his hand raised for a little bit.
Okay, Commissioner Anderson?
So I went to the Yukon mapping site, and if you look at the 2016 aerials and you measure from the middle of that stream over to the closest bus, it's about 110 feet. And if you look at that same measurement for the 2023 ones, it's about 60 feet.
That's what I'm talking about. And even though we're giving some back, we're still way, way far encroaching into the original buffer.
So what happened? Did we add more buses to this area?
I don't know how many we had before. I know how many I had to accommodate.
That's the only explanation. If you're saying you can't fit them in one row, that we must have more buses or they park somewhere else or something, but.
Commissioner Paskowitz, would you like to speak?
Commissioner Paskowitz?
Yes, Chris, you're an engineer. I'm relying on your expertise and value of research on bus parking and spaces required for safety movement of buses. Have any of your research or information guidelines come from DOT?
No, DOT doesn't deal with school busing. There's nothing on their website that shows me a recommended parking stall size. I had to get that from Board of Ed websites, National Board of Ed websites, specifically ones that Dean Barnes from the Board of Ed pointed me at. It turns out that school bus parking areas aren't even really covered by the ASHTO recommended parking spaces for things like, commercial parking lots, municipal parking lots. I mean, I can find you all kinds of resources that say how big a parking space should be. But when it comes to school buses, all my usual resources are pretty quiet on the subject. I'm not sure exactly why that is, except it's a specialty thing. In the world of civil engineering, you don't design a lot of school bus parking lots. I do a lot of commercial, I do a lot of other, buses, just not really covered in the guiding documents.
So the engineering principles and practices that you followed are the guidelines that are used today in most communities.
Yes, that's true.
All right, then I'm relying on you and your expertise in helping in the design of this. And I think we should move forward on the application and not bring up any more historical background on the property, because the public safety is the concern for me, not what happened before with the land, but the land use that's gonna be used now in its best use. So let's please move forward on this application.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Chris, you mentioned at the beginning that there's possibly another area being looked at for bus parking.
There's all kinds of rumors out there. People I talk to say we should put them here, we should put them there. We tried to put them over here. At the moment, there's no real plan that I'm aware of coming forward from any source saying we should move the buses to a particular spot. I know there are some people who have ideas, but most of these ideas have to do with property we don't control. So
Yeah, because
I can't wait for those decisions to be made.
I wish those decisions were made because I would hate to pave such a large area and then within, the near future, we're moving the buses out of here, half of them then move. And we find that we didn't need to pave this entire area because we moved half the buses to another location.
Again, that's a hypothetical, and I don't really have the luxury of a hypothetical at the moment. I have a project to move forward. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I get it. But you understand
And
the
like I said,
concern here.
if we did move the buses someplace else in the immediate future or even the far future, we will still benefit from this parking lot. We'll still use it.
Yeah, that's the one saving grace that I said that, that could be used, but
Right, but it wouldn't be used on a daily basis. I mean, the extravaganza, I can see parking there, but that's a once a year event. How often would such a large parking lot be at capacity?
maybe it could be a
to
commuter,
justify
a commuter
paving
lot.
all of that?
Anyway, yeah, I have one idea, if I may,
Sure.
maybe a compromise. I still don't think it just because we have a need that it justifies the foregoing of an application to expand the area. But maybe we could modify this application to acknowledge where the lines were, how much we're taking, and you basically would be applying for it like that. So it's get exact numbers, because we ask applicants for exact numbers. How much impervious are you adding? How much are you taking away? How much wetland are you encompassing? It's always in the square footage and it's in the area, calculations and everything. Let's have those numbers and add it to the application and say, okay, this is what we're asking to do.
So what
Instead of just ignoring the fact that this is how it was, but this is what we need, so this is how it is.
I can get you a number, how much additional asphalt is being covered. That's not a problem. I cannot get you a number of what is different between now and what happened before Dieselgate. I have no way of quantifying that. I don't have a survey that showed what that area that you recall, the ones from that aerial photograph were. I will never be able to prove that number one way or another.
There's ways, because you could see the catch basins in those aerial photos. You can measure back from there. You can,
If you want measurements off of aerial photographs, I'll provide them to you, but that's not a survey.
I understand. But I mean, at least it'll get closer than than looking at it and guessing. Because my guess is that we're doubling the size of that lot. Just use a bus length as an example. You have 3 bus lengths now to the street line, and before you had 1. So I think doubling the size is being conservative.
Well, you need the 3 buses because you need a bus's length to be able to pull out. So that's why in that plan, we have a 24-foot parking space for the front, so that's the smaller buses. And then you have a 42-foot aisle because that's the length of the buses. And then you have a 42-foot parking space.
I
That's where those
understand your
numbers
point
come
of view about the need, but like I said, that doesn't forego the proper method of increasing the, encroaching into a wetland buffer to accommodate the need.
Commissioner Ellis.
Just for conversation, just to make the point, it's like our concern, if this was not the town, this was a private developer coming before us, our concern wouldn't be, can you get your 40 buses in there? That wouldn't be our problem, right? We wouldn't even be discussing that. Not their needs. We'd be discussing, well, you're encroaching on, wetlands. As simple as that.
Anyone could apply for that, but this is just already done. So, I mean, the town could apply for that and we could certainly approve it, but I just can't just go blindly into it and vote to approve it because it's already been done.
Okay, so we seem to be reiterating that point, which not saying it's not valid, right? Absolutely a valid point. But I'd like to move on from that and ask the commission if they believe that a public hearing is needed for this application. Is there significant impact?
I don't think you're gonna get much attention from the public on a bus parking garage. Probably not, if it was on the other side of the street, part of the park or something, you'd probably get more interest,
Yeah,
but.
all right, so I'd like to hear from the other commissioners if they think a public hearing is needed.
Commissioner Paskowitz, I have an observation, a question to Chris.
Well, hold on, I'm polling the commissioners to see if a public hearing is needed. So Commissioner Ellis, what are your thoughts?
I don't think so.
All right,
No.
Commissioner Paskowitz, what are your thoughts on public hearing?
No,
Or
I
one
don't
is
think
needed.
I don't think it's required. And I don't think the public will be interested because there's no one around the area that's going to be impacted.
All right, Commissioner Ostrinsky?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. Commissioner Anderson?
I don't think so either.
All right, so while we're discussing it, then let's get a motion that a public hearing is not needed for this application.
I'll make a motion that a public hearing is not needed, even as much of a controversy as I brought up, but I still, like I said, I don't think there'd be.
We don't need opinions injected into the motion, just make the motion.
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
All right.
I'll second his opinionated
All
motion.
right, so the motion is that a public hearing is not needed. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so public hearing, motion passes, public hearing is not needed. What's
So
the,
back to Commissioner Paskowitz, I had a question again for Chris.
yeah, go ahead.
Chris, the gravel parking area that's now existing, are you going to pave any larger than the gravel parking lot that exists?
No,
Where
we'll
the
be
buses
paving
are.
less. We'll be paving less of it.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I need to know. So the impact to me is going to be less on any upland review area that exists or any wetland that exists.
Yes, by
Everything you do-
6,000 square feet.
All right. I hope we move forward on this soon so we can get into construction. Thank you.
All right, so what's the desire of the commission? Do you want to table this or do you want to? We need more information. I know we asked Chris for a couple of items. Do we need those to make a decision?
I would like to see some professional overlays like Paul mentioned that would kind of describe it a little better, maybe,
Okay, so you'd like to table this till next
in my
meeting?
opinion.
Okay. All right. those-
I would think that that's the due diligence that we would impose
At
upon the
minimum,
developer, private developer, so yeah.
Okay, all right. Then that said, can I get a motion to table at this application? Inland Wetland 25-06.
Can I just ask Chris a question first?
Sure, go ahead.
Were you planning on this project starting immediately within the next 30 days?
We're starting in August.
All right, before we table this, anything else that commissioners would like to see regarding this? So we have it for the next meeting. All right, so then go ahead and give me the motion.
I'll make a motion to table till the next meeting.
Right.
The
Second.
application, which one is it?
All right, motion from Commissioner Bashant, second by Commissioner Ellis. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay, seeing none, the motion to table is unanimous. We'll pick this up at the next meeting in July. Okay, next item on our agenda, old business, seeing none. Next item is public participation on non-agenda items. Any member of the public wishing to speak, please come forward. Nobody in the room,
And
anybody
there are no
online?
attendees online other than Chris.
Okay, moving on then, we will go to communications and reports. Town council liaisons.
Sorry to make you sit through all that, ladies.
No, it's, I'm part of this agenda as well. I remember.
I'm sure you heard a few things that, you know. Yeah, but yours.
And I know that, I think our latest might be a good story.
Isn't it you anyway? It's just this one.
It's the history we inherited.
Good evening, everyone. Councilors, Brad and Draco. I've looked through our last council agenda. Just a few things that might be of interest to the commission. What we had, two presentations, one proclamation recognizing July as Recreation and Parks Month. And also presentation by Chris on the Garfield Street Connectivity Project, and which went into more detail than just the parking lot. So we got a lot more information, and it was a really great presentation and good information.
Thank you.
I don't know if you're gonna say anything more about that. We have a report tonight. Beyond what you've done.
Well, I do have agent communications for the commission, but I really wasn't expecting this much of a explanation of the Garfield project. I can go into it further if we'd like to.
I mean, it's up to the commission, but
I can pull up the PowerPoint for you.
It was a great PowerPoint and it went through the entire Garfield Street area. So it took into consideration and explanation a lot more than just the lower, upper, whichever you want to call it, of Garfield Street where the parking lot is. Under new business, the registrars of voters came and discussed the voting plan for the upcoming, if there are primaries and the upcoming election in November. And a request from the police department for sole source request for license plate reader technology. Other than that, you want to bring up? Right now I have here was going to be a suggestion that, hey, you might want to have Chris come to the meeting and give the explanation of the Garfield Street project because of the paving and the water quality structures and storm drainage improvements, whatever. And, you know, it was interesting how you indicated, okay, let's just see, to show us right what we have purview.
Scope.
Our area of responsibility is, but in essence, I think it all kind of is gonna blend in because there's gonna be overflows and runoffs, whatever, so. You're thinking of the hang backlogs, maybe at some point, you give them the slides and else can put through the plans. See how tall we put it together eventually. And then just one other thing, like I indicated, it might not be a bad idea to look back at some of the minutes of the conservation groups from that time period, because I know it was controversial when it was found out that that land was taken for use of bus parking. I do remember some interesting exchanges and conversation between the town manager and the board of that and conservation, just to see the history of it. What was promised, because if something was promised, there was, you know, an indication or at least future action or whatever, if it was an act in a part.
Do we know approximately when that event happened, so we can go back and look at those minutes?
Probably shortly after the cleanup was completed. I remember, I think we were gonna hear, we had an initial application, we were gonna hear for something from the board, and that's when I brought it up, and they said, okay, we're gonna come back to you, and they just never came back, so.
Had to have been at least, because it was before my tenure, and I'm in my second term, so it had to have been at least 6 years.
Was it that long already? Wow.
So,
Time flies.
Yeah.
so if there
When was the
were-
cleanup completed? Do you know?
Well,
Phil?
judging from the photos that Paul showed us during my speech,
Yep.
it looks like 2017 to 2018.
Yep, that's to say the photo of October 2017 shows the previous configuration, and then April of 2018 shows the lot completely dug up. So sometime between, again, October of 17 and April of 18, or it could have been happening around.
No, but she was mentioning like when this discussion might occur, so it would have been after the whole cleanup and after the
After.
lot was leveled, so maybe a year after that.
Yeah, and were those discussions at the wetland commission, or were they, you know, at the town council meetings?
Buffers being, removed and everything would be replaced, and now we can't revisit the pain, so.
No, it was definitely in the wetlands commission meeting.
So just from my point of knowledge, when you're talking about these buffers, this is a vegetated strip. You're talking about a
Unimproved land, basically.
unimproved land, okay,
Yeah. Yeah, it was scruffy, it wasn't pretty or anything, but it was unimproved.
okay.
So that's, even though it's not our purview at 824, but I think that would definitely require that if you want to expand the improvement of that lot. But that's not what I'm concerned about. I'm more concerned about with, the wetland buffer. It ends right there, so if you just pulled it back a little bit further, then we'd have nothing to say about it at all. If you came back another 30 feet or so. As one of our commission members gave you those measurements, I forgot what they were, from 160 down to 60, so that's a large amount of space.
Yeah. All right, so who would research the records to find if there was an agreement?
I don't remember any agreement, so.
It's a searchable, given the searchability of the website, but, I can try. I can call Graves to see if you.
I mean, if it's just a question of reading through the minutes, we have them both on our website, I believe, and of course, town clerk's got all the minutes. So finding the minutes wouldn't be the biggest chore. Following through on whatever might have been agreed to or not agreed to is probably the unknowable. What we did or didn't do, or what we promised or didn't promise. We may or may not find answers. I just try to manage expectations here.
Yeah.
But as John said, maybe just clean it up and be included in this application. Just to finalize it now, not that anything could change with the application, just.
Well, Chris suggested that it is actually in the application, but I don't feel that way, because I don't feel that it's in there just because we're acknowledging that we, like the chairman said, taking, but the compromise would be that we actually included in the application. Okay, we're acknowledging that we took this much extra space here, and now we're asking,
Does it become
for you
moot
to
then?
for you to approve this.
Sorry, I shouldn't speak out of turn like that.
Yeah, no, I don't know.
Like I said, it was a little bit of a bombshell, but it's only because I remember it vividly. Well, not that vividly to tell you what date it was, but I do remember the discussion that I said, when are we going to restore that? And then we just, whoever was applying, I think it was Board of Ed, maybe it was the town, they wanted to do something. And they said, oh, we'll get back to you on that. And then, of course, we just never heard anything from them again. That could potentially happen again here, who knows?
I mean, to go to a point that you brought up during the conversation, do we have any idea how many buses we've traditionally operated?
Well, they had to fit in one row there along that stretch. The garage had 10 or 12 bays, but that was only one bus.
Or was there another parking lot they were using?
No.
There had to be.
Well, they're
There's so
across the
many
st-
buses there now. It seems like the number of buses,
Well,
looking at those aerials, it seemed like the number of buses doubled.
I mean, has our student
Parking somewhere
population
else.
risen that much?
no, not that much, but I heard some information and I have no way to confirm it, but something like we have 2 or 3 buses for each bus needed, something like that. So we have a surplus of buses. Don't quote me, well, you could quote me because I said it, but I'm not swearing by that, but I heard something along those lines that we have like at least 2 or 3 buses for each route.
I mean, most of them are out when I come to work in the morning.
Just a suggestion would be to go to the Board of Ed.
Yeah, that's done. They could give you that information for sure. And they do keep buses across the street in the other garage, so.
Any other questions for us?
Thank you. All right, moving on, next item, pond life research and education.
Mr. Chairman, I think Chris had a agent communication.
Well, it's not on, I'm gonna have to talk to somebody about this. My agent communication was left off the agenda. So if you'd like to take pond life research and education first, and then I'll address what I would.
Yeah,
normally address.
since I already brought it up, let's
Yeah.
cover the pond life and then we'll go to agent communications.
Okay, Commissioner Pasquich here. I had a brief conversation with Chris recently that there's been a licensed practitioner involved in the application of product into Mill Pond to help diminish the algae bloom. And I believe one application has already begun. Is that right, Chris?
I don't know when he's going to make that application, to be honest with you. I think it does give proposed dates in the application itself. And I do have a copy of that on my desk someplace. And after we spoke on Friday, I intended to get to that. I just had a fairly hectic Monday and Tuesday this week. So I can have specifics for you at the next meeting.
That's fine. You also briefly mentioned that there's going to be 3 applications of the product into the pond over the summer.
Again, that's in the application. I can bring that next month.
All right, I'll look forward to that then. Thank you, Chris, for all your help.
What I'll do is I'll include a copy of that application in your packets for next month's meeting, so everybody gets it.
Great. One other question, in your conversation with this practitioner, is this something that's going to be scheduled over a scheduled amount of time, like every year?
It is an annual program. I don't generally have much to do with it. That's handled through Recreation and Parks and Recreation. What do we call it here? Yeah. Bill DeMayo's people. So I get a copy of the application as the wetland agent, but the staff liaison for this pesticide application, herbicide application is Bill's staff, probably Clay. And I can certainly bring it up with him as to how frequent this is supposed to be if it's not spelled out in the application.
All right, I look forward to that discussion and hearing about the use of it again, because I believe algae bloom doesn't completely wipe out in one scheduled event, depending on the circumstances. So if you could also include some of that information, I greatly appreciate it, Chris.
Okay.
That's all I have to report tonight. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go on to agent communications.
Okay. So since I spoke to you last in April, I have done an agent approval for 466 Churchill Drive. That's a condominium complex, so it's actually 6 units. I didn't write down all the numbers, but this is a replacement of 6 decks with no expected disturbance in the URA. The buildings and the decks are in the upland review area, but they are not doing any work to the footings. So they're replacing the decks without excavation. So we did an agent approval for that. Did an agent approval for 146 Glenview, replacement of a deck on a single family residence. also with no expected disturbance in the upland review area. The restoration of the area around the Mill Pond Bridge is nearly complete. What remains for work there is primarily the trees and some of the other plantings that I promised to this commission. I don't have a timeline for that, but it will be this season. We've got some other, I guess, more pressing matters going on for the people who do the plantings. So that they promised me they'll do them. And I believe that we will, and as soon as they are, they'll let me know. First off, I'm gonna get a bill for the trees, so I'm gonna know when they're doing it. I have to pay that bill, yeah. I have a notification for pond treatment for the Apple Hill and Cortland Drive condominium complex. There's a pond over there and they have they treat their pond like we treat Mill Pond. It's a smaller pond, but they do deal with that. And I do have a notification from, I believe that came to me through DEP. And the last item I've got under agent communications is something that council liaison touched on. I've got a memo regarding the meeting room changes for early voting. I can include that in your packet for next month if you'd like, or we can just, basically I'll handle it administratively. But what it says is if there's going to be a primary and or the November elections, while they're doing the early voting, we won't have access to the council chambers. So we have alternate rooms. If there is a primary, that doesn't actually affect us. It doesn't cover our date. But let's see, where is it? Bear with me a moment here. Our meeting on October 21st has been moved to conference room 201A, which is across from my office upstairs. So expect for the October meeting that we will meet up there. And what we do have to do is we have to, what's James say here? We have to renotice that particular meeting 30 days prior to the meeting. So I'll probably have him do that sooner than later so that we're covered. And what it means is that it basically has to, a public notice distribution to our websites and whatnot that says that meeting's not being held here, it's being held upstairs. And if we feel it's going to be something of a challenge for those who would attend the meeting, I can also ask the registrar if it's okay to put a notice on the outside of the door saying go upstairs to room 201A. So that's what I've got.
We did form the subcommittee for the regulations to be updated. I think we spoke about sending out an email asking commissioners if there are any changes in particular they wanted to have made. I don't recall.
Was that an email I was supposed to send?
I think you're gonna have staff send it out on our behalf, just polling the commissioners.
Okay, let me make a note to that.
And we still need to see the model regs. Unless those are posted somewhere that we can go and access them. Model regulations. The state provides them. Thank you.
There's got to be some things everybody has as a pet peeve that they want to have looked at. So I think we'll get some response to that.
What was the one thing that everyone agreed on? The signage?
Yeah, for public hearing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree
We
with
just
that one.
needed some
Possibly that buffer.
something drafted by the town attorney, right, for that one.
Oh, well, basically I'm going to steal it from Paul's regs and provide it to you.
Just roll it in. Okay.
Yeah, TPC has that requirement, so, the only thing that'll change is what section of your regulations they go into from his regulations.
What was the other one with the buffer that were reduced from 100 feet to 0 feet?
Yeah, that was.
No primary structures or something?
Right, that was TPZ regulation that was removed, so
Oh,
we should
oh.
consider putting that into our regulations.
You want to reincorporate that? That's something you want to look at? Because we probably have an old copy of the regs that it was removed from, that we can get that from.
Yeah, I would recommend we go research on that one too.
So that's it for communications and reports. Time for adjournment. Nobody has anything else? Motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Bashan, second from Commissioner Ellis. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Have a great night.
Good night.